Hey guys, it's Purple Ferret here. I'm a little sick, if you can tell, so excuse my voice sounding a little awkward. I could theoretically afford to put off recording the voice of this until I'm not sick because I'm posting every other week and not every single week, but it is Wednesday of the week before, and I don't want to put it off until I feel better because I might get worse before then. And if I get worse before then I'm going to have an even tighter deadline, and I don't want to do that. Now, I know that no one is going to remember this, and if you do, no, you don't. So in 2020, around June of 2020, so about 6 years ago, I drew a Goblin character, and the video is just called Goblin. It's a bad video, don't go watch it. It's 5 minutes long, but still don't go watch it. I said that I had figured out a story for him that was beyond what his original purpose was, which was just a fun little design experiment of what a creeper would look like in a more humanoid form. I abandoned the story he was originally a part of, and he wasn't really that important to that story, so even if I do come back to it, he will not appear in it. So I decided he should be front and center for a different story I had the idea of, which is this one that I'm about to tell you about that I barely know anything about. I know background info and some world building, and I also know some vague things that will happen in the future and in the present of when this speed draw is taking place, but it's not super concrete. Things are very subject to change. Back in the beginning of March, I got really back into his character design and redesigned it and repurposed him for a new story idea I had. I'm gonna go a little bit into world building real quick. So essentially, in the world building of the world he lives in, goblins aren't super common in the area where he lives, and the ones that are there don't really stay long term if they plan on having families, so the population just shrinks instead of growing. And there's a lot of rumors and stigmas about them by the human population, so he feels very unwelcome in this place, and he can't really do anything about it because he's a child. And I know I just said that goblin families don't stick around and raise families there, but we'll get into why he's here later. The story starts where this speed draw is, so I'm actually drawing something that's pretty much the very beginning of the story, because the story's not going to give the information of how he ended up here until after he goes back to the place where he came from. So basically, he's sitting in the shade in this like kind of marketplace thing. He doesn't have any money because he's a child and he's homeless at this point. And this human kid comes up to him in the shade and is all like, "Hey, want to hang out? I'll buy you food." He cautiously says yes because he's worried that it's a trick or something. And this human kid goes and buys food with him. And then the shopkeeper or stall owner or whatever points out that he's buying food for a goblin, and there's this stigma of if you feed a goblin, they'll never leave you alone and stuff. And the kid did not realize he was a goblin, and it's made very obvious to my goblin character. His name is Keaton, that the human kid did not know. And he's like, oh, he was only being nice because he thought I was a random human kid. But this is not actually the case. He's being nice because he saw him sitting there, and he had seen him sitting there multiple days out of the week and just now approached because, like, no way you just sit there all the time because you want to. So basically, he invites him to come to his house and is all like, you should come over and hang out because I have to go home and I want to keep hanging out with you. And he's like, yeah, sure, we can do that, because one, he doesn't really have anything else to do, and two, he's crossing his fingers that he can bum more food off of him because he's homeless. So they go to his house. We find out that Leo, the kid that invited Keaton, is a foster child and lives in a home with a bunch of other kids and his foster mother, Nora. And they do a whole bunch of hanging out with him, Nora, and his foster siblings. And then Nora calls Leo away at some point, and then Keaton excuses himself to the bathroom or something, but was more so curious why Nora took Leo out of the room. And then he starts eavesdropping on their conversation and finds out that Leo brought him there in the hopes that Nora would take him in. And Nora, without having spoken to Leo, is like, I know what you're doing. We have too many kids here. We physically cannot take in another. I'm sorry. And Leo's like, I will take half portions, please. He's homeless, please. And Keaton has not directly stated that he's homeless to Leo or anyone. It's just kind of obvious. And he's like, oh, I didn't realize how obvious it was. Which, like, come on, dude. It was obvious. And so they go to leave the room that they were in and find him standing outside, and they're like, oh, well, this is awkward. And Leo did get Nora to agree to let him stay, at least for a little bit. Keaton's like, so, I heard you talking. You physically cannot afford for me to stay here. I don't want to be a burden on you. And Nora's like, oh, but you're not a burden, I promise. And he's like, I kind of already am. I have a place to stay and I ran away. And this has Nora concerned that he ran away because it was a toxic or dangerous environment. And so she asks him about that. And Keaton's like, no, nothing like that. I just felt like a burden on them. And I think I'm more of a burden having run away 2 weeks ago than I would be if I had stayed. And so it's at this point that Keaton decides that he's going to go home. Leo decides to go with him just to make sure he actually does and that he's not lying a little bit, but also because he's curious where he lives and stuff. This part of the story is very loose from here on out. All I can tell you is that Keaton was properly adopted. He's not a foster child. He was adopted by human parents, and they're not trying to replace his parents. His parents died very recently, like a matter of months, and they know that they can never replace them, and he's old enough that he could probably never call anyone else mom or dad. And while they are upset that he did run away, they are more relieved that he came back than angry. He does get, grounded. They're like, you can't leave the house without us for a little while because they're worried about him running off again. And he fully understands why they want to do that and is okay with that. He didn't really leave the house that much before he left anyway. And he does now have a reason to leave, which is going to visit Leo. But he knows that one of his new parents are going to want to go with him wherever he goes, and they could come with him to Leo's house, or Leo could come to their house. Doesn't really matter. He can still see Leo. All the other things that I know about this story are kind of spoilers or similarly vague, so I'm running out of things to talk about. I do have a couple more world building things to talk about though. So I'll go back to world building real quick. So I didn't really mention everything about goblins before. I mentioned like the stereotypes about them and that they don't really live in the area very much. But I didn't really mention what they look like and stuff. I know you can see, but like just to tell you, they have green skin. It varies in shades. His hair is brown, but I tinted it greens to look a little bit more harmonious here. So he does have brown hair. It just looks green here on purpose. They also have like pointy ears, but they're not like long elf ears. They're very short, which I used to be obsessed with long pointy ears, which is why I gave him short pointy ears. So I would force myself to branch out in character design a little bit. They also have perpetually black fingernails. Like they just naturally have black fingernails. So even in the shade of where he's sitting, like I intentionally made it kind of easy to tell that his skin is green for audience, but imagine like in real life, the lighting is a little bit more warm and making him look more yellowy, which makes him look more human, especially with his ears covered. So as long as you didn't see his fingernails, you wouldn't really realize until you got up close that he wasn't human. This doesn't super apply to Keaton specifically at this point in the story because of his age, but goblins are on average shorter than the average human. A tall goblin is still considered average height or shorter, but Keaton is still a kid, and so it's not immediately obvious whether or not he's shorter than other people or just hasn't grown yet. Something that's not story related at all, but is related to my drawing process. I have inadvertently gotten faster. The past few have been shorter, and I haven't been putting them at a faster speed or anything. I've just been drawing faster because I've gotten used to my work setup, which is good, but it also means I'm gonna have to draw more complex things if I want longer videos, which I'm not too excited about because I like drawing cropped images that are more visually interesting but easier to draw. All in all, I think it just comes down to I need to do more background heavy things. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you come and see the next one, and that you check out my Tumblr link in the description. Bye!